Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are unwrapping one of the most mind-bending archaeological discoveries of all time. This is a device that completely shattered our understanding of the ancient world. You'll often hear it called the world's first known analog computer, and for good reason. This absolutely incredible instrument used a highly intricate, completely hidden system of bronze gears to calculate and predict incredibly complex astronomical events. And get this, it did all of that more than 2,000 years ago. It's this massive story of ancient genius, unbelievable luck, and cutting-edge modern science. So let's jump right in and explore the absolute mystery of the Antikythera mechanism. To really understand how crazy this is, we've got to set the scene. Picture this. It's the year 1900. A crew of Greek sponge divers are out in the Mediterranean when a massive storm suddenly rolls in. Desperate for safety, they drop anchor near this tiny, rugged island called Antikythera, right between Crete and mainland Greece. Well, once the storm finally passes, they dive down to get back to work. But instead of finding sponges, about 50 meters down, they plunge right into an ancient, heavily loaded shipwreck. Sitting right there on the seafloor was the staggering collection of luxury goods. We're talking statues, jewelry, glassware, and these seemingly ordinary lumps of corroded bronze. Now, they didn't know it just yet, but that storm had literally blown them right on top of one of history's best-kept secrets. So, here is how this actually played out. The divers found the wreck in 1900, sure, but the real jaw-drop moment happened during the recovery operations a year later, in 1901. Archaeologists were hauling up these heavily corroded bronze lumps, which, honestly, just looked like garbage, just damaged metal scrap. But then, one of the pieces split open. And right there, hidden inside the crust, they saw the unmistakable outline of finely cut bronze gear teeth. It was a massive shock. Scientific dating later confirmed this artifact was created between 150 and 100 BCE. Finding precision gears in a shipwreck from the 1st century BCE? That was completely unheard of.
There's just a huge disconnect here between expectation and reality. You see, when archaeologists dig up a Hellenistic shipwreck, they know what to look for. They expect pottery, statues, maybe some ancient coins. They absolutely, unequivocally do not expect to find precision bronze gearing. At the time of this discovery, the consensus among scholars was that this level of mechanical complexity simply didn't exist until the invention of medieval European clocks. And those were produced over 1,000 years later. The technology was so astonishingly out of place that some early researchers seriously argued it had to be a mistake, like maybe someone accidentally dropped a medieval clock into the ancient shipwreck hundreds of years later. No. Careful analysis of the associated coins and inscriptions proved it without a doubt. This was a genuine ancient artifact. So what exactly was hiding inside this corroded lump? Scientists eventually identified more than 30 interlocking bronze gears. And you have to remember, the surviving fragments we have today only represent about a third of the original machine. A ton of the components were just lost to corrosion or the violent shipwreck itself. But the truly mind-blowing part is how densely packed and intricate the whole thing was. These 30-plus gears weren't part of some massive, clunky industrial machine. Oh no. They were meticulously mounted inside a wooden case roughly the size of a modern shoebox. It was highly portable, deeply complex, and elegantly designed.
Let's walk through exactly how someone in the ancient world would have actually used this thing. It wasn't just a static calendar, it was a fully integrated computational instrument. First, the user would grab and rotate a small hand crank located on the side of the wooden box. That physical input caused all those internal gears to move. Because these gears were cut with very specific, carefully calculated mathematical ratios, turning the crank drove multiple systems all at exactly the same time. On the outside of the box, pointers would glide across circular dials, essentially displaying real-time astronomical data. You were physically cranking time forward or backward to see the exact state of the heavens.
For decades, we were kind of in the dark because the bronze was so fragile. We could only guess at how it actually worked inside. But modern X-ray computed tomography totally changed the game. Without having to dismantle the fragile fragments and risk destroying them, researchers could finally peek inside. And wow, what they saw was just breathtaking. The scans revealed gear trains of remarkable complexity designed to track celestial bodies. The front display, for instance, tracked the exact positions of the sun and moon against the zodiac. It even had this ingenious little rotating sphere, colored black and white, that physically spun around to show the phases of the moon. It's just an astonishing level of celestial modeling. Now, let's flip it around to the rear dials and see how this built into some truly advanced astronomy. The back of the device tracked much longer, far more complex cycles. One of the main features was a dial mapping out the metonic cycle. If you're not familiar, this is a 19-year period where, after exactly 19 years, the phases of the moon repeat on the exact same calendar dates. By mapping this out, the Antikythera mechanism basically functioned as a highly precise, long-term lunar calendar, seamlessly harmonizing the lunar month with the solar year.
But it didn't stop at just the phases of the moon. It also tracked what's called the Saros cycle. This is a specific astronomical cycle that ancient astronomers use to accurately predict the arrival of both solar and lunar eclipses. Just imagine holding a shoebox-sized device that predicts solar eclipses years in advance. And fascinatingly, this mechanism wasn't just purely about astronomy, it was deeply cultural too. Evidence shows these dials also indicated the timing of major Greek athletic competitions, including the Olympic Games. It literally wove the mechanics of the heavens together with the everyday civic life of the ancient Greeks. Okay, I'm going to geek out for a second here because this next feature perfectly illustrates just how genius the creators were. So, a really basic assumption in early astronomy might be that the moon travels across the night sky at a constant, steady speed. But ancient Greek astronomers knew better. They knew the moon's orbit is actually elliptical, meaning its speed appears to speed up and slow down from our perspective here on Earth. Now, to represent that mathematically is one thing, but to build it mechanically, that is a whole different ballgame. The designers used a brilliant offset rotational gear system. Basically, one gear drove another via a little pin and slot, subtly speeding up and slowing down the pointer to perfectly simulate the moon's actual irregular elliptical velocity in the sky. Historians look at this and compare it to clock-making innovations that wouldn't be seen again for centuries. Now, you're probably wondering, how did anyone even know how to operate this thing? Well, digital imaging allowed scholars to read thousands of incredibly tiny Greek characters engraved right onto the mechanism, stuff that was hidden for millennia under layers of marine corrosion. And you know what? These weren't mystical symbols or coded messages or props for secret religious rituals. They read exactly like a practical instruction manual. The text literally explains astronomical phenomena, tells you how to read the eclipse predictions, and explains how the user should interpret the dials. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that this device was designed for educated individuals familiar with Greek science. It was meant to be used, shared, and understood. So, who actually built this marvel? Sadly, there's no surviving name tag. But historians have managed to narrow down the suspects based on the immense expertise required to pull this off. One primary candidate is the tradition of Archimedes of Syracuse. Now, Archimedes was a master mathematician and engineer, famously known for building astronomical models. While this specific device was likely made after his death, it heavily relies on his intellectual legacy. Another huge possibility is the island of Rhodes. Rhodes was a major hub for astronomy and instrument making and famously home to the philosopher Posidonius and his school. While we can't pin down one specific individual, it is absolutely clear this was the product of a highly advanced, thriving scientific community. Because the Antikythera mechanism is so shockingly advanced, popular culture just loves to run wild with it. I'm sure you've heard the claims, extraterrestrial intervention, time travel, artifacts left behind by lost mystical supercivilizations. But let's be totally clear here. Looking at the actual historical facts, there is absolutely zero credible archaeological evidence supporting these sci-fi interpretations. Frankly, the true history is much more impressive anyway. This device fits perfectly within the proven, profound scientific traditions of Hellenistic Greek scholars like Archimedes, Hipparchus, and Apollonius. It didn't take aliens to build this. It took the absolute peak of ancient human mathematical and engineering brilliance. Which naturally brings us to a massive, critical question. If ancient engineers were truly capable of building something this incredibly sophisticated, why is the Antikythera mechanism the only one we've ever found? It feels like an isolated miracle, right? But was it really a one-off anomaly? Or is this just a tiny clue pointing to a much larger world of ancient technology that has simply vanished from the archaeological record? Well, the answer to that comes down to a very practical issue: preservation. See, the mechanism was made of bronze, and in antiquity, bronze was incredibly valuable. When devices broke, or when empires eventually fell, or when armies needed new weapons, bronze scientific instruments were almost always melted down and recycled. That is the ultimate fate of almost all ancient bronze. It just disappears entirely from history. The Antikythera mechanism is the exception to the rule for one very simple reason. It sank. Dropping 50 meters to the seafloor in a shipwreck completely took it out of circulation. The seawater definitely corroded it, sure, but the depths protected it from the ultimate destroyer, human recycling. And we know from ancient texts that they actually mention other mechanical planetariums and geared clocks, meaning this was almost certainly part of a broader, now lost technological tradition. Let's pause here for a second because this quote brilliantly hits the nail on the head regarding the biggest lesson of the Antikythera mechanism.
The disappearance of complex geared instruments after the Hellenistic era does not imply that they never existed. Rather, it illustrates how fragile scientific knowledge can become. We so often assume that technological progress is just this simple, straight line curving upward. But history is messy. Political upheaval, economic collapse, or warfare can easily erase a society's technological achievements. Knowledge can flourish only to be completely lost for centuries before ever being rediscovered. This device is just a really powerful reminder that human progress is deeply, deeply vulnerable. And that leaves us with this final, highly provocative thought. The true mystery of the Antikythera mechanism is no longer really about how it worked. Modern science has beautifully decoded its gears and dials. The real mystery today is about what it represents. Just how widespread was this magnificent knowledge, and how much ancient brilliance has been permanently lost to time? As modern underwater archaeology continues to explore that same 2,000-year-old shipwreck today, we really have to wonder, what other secrets are still resting out there in the deep, just waiting to completely reshape our understanding of human history? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what we think we know about the past.